Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the LGS Pod, the Soccer Shorts companion podcast, where we shine a spotlight on local stories about grassroots soccer here in our hometown of San Diego, as well as across the U.S. and around the world. I'm John Cross, the founder of Soccer Shorts, and with me tonight, as always, is our co-host, Dylan Wilson. Dylan, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, keeping cool, yeah, it's been a nice couple of weeks for me, I guess.
Yeah, we're here in San Diego, so big thing for us every year is Comic-Con. You a Comic-Con goer?
I am not. I do enjoy the people watching outside of Comic Con though. Can be a lot of fun. I will actually be out of town this weekend though, so I won't get to do that this year.
Yeah, I don't know when the last time I went with a badge, but I'm old enough to remember actually taking my kids and walking up on a Saturday to buy tickets. That was probably like 2004 or something like that, 2003. But yeah, you walk up, buy tickets, go do the event. But anymore now, I go with one of my sons frequently. I don't know if we'll go this year, but we just go and hang out. He's a big anime comic person, and we just go hang out around all the outside the convention center stuff, all the things you don't need a badge for, which is still a huge amount of things that you can go and see and do over the course of the 4 days here.
Yeah, I've never been. Since I moved to town, it's been kind of in its more commercialized, more modern state. So I've never really had a chance to do what people think of as Comic-Con.
Yeah, I find it a lot of fun. Just a big,
Yeah.
pop culture event, especially on the outside.
Yeah.
Right. Well, one of the things I'll do one of those. I was today years old when I found out. Saw a post from FIFA earlier today that they were congratulating their graduates of their master's program that they have. And I had no idea that FIFA for 25 years has been sponsoring a master's program at a Swiss university. And it's kind of struck me all day that find it, I'm not sure ironic is really the right word, but that FIFA is sponsoring a master's in sports management, because I don't know. I mean, it's probably great connections for anybody who gets accepted and then goes through the program.
And that's all you need to say about it.
And what do they teach you? The fine art of the grift?
Well, if you don't
how to deal with authoritarian regimes.
They teach you how to stay on the good side of the people who do the grifting. You don't even need to teach you to grift.
How to pretend to do social causes and still make bank.
I have to say, I don't want to go way off on a tangent here, but I TA'd in college, and the first class I TA'd for was a social anthropology class. And I remember very distinctly the teacher used that as an opportunity to explain how rich people donating a bunch of things at the end of their lives isn't actually better than them just paying their workers the whole way through.
Right.
I appreciated him framing that kind of social commentary that way, because it's very, very easy when you put it that way, and it is kind of funny. It's like, FIFA, they kind of acknowledge what they're doing here, I think.
Yeah, I can tell you as a teacher all my life, when I was a young teacher, I thought it was cool when someone would donate something or help out, because it was always appreciated. And the longer I worked and the more I learned about the world and life, there never should be a reason for anybody to donate if we just fund things properly. So that gets along the same kind of line. So it always rubs me usually the wrong way when I see a big story about, even if they're highlighting a student who raised money and did a great thing for their class or their school, they shouldn't even be in a position to have to do that in the first place. And it goes along the same lines of paying fair wages in the first place.
There's actually, I don't know how widespread this is, but in the circles I run in on the internet, there is actually a name for that phenomenon you're describing, where an actually tragic thing is phrased as this feel-good story, and the name of the phenomenon is the orphan crushing machine, where there's this heroic heroic story published about someone shutting down the orphan crushing machine, but nobody ever stops to ask why we have an orphan crushing machine. And so
In
it's
the
kind
first
of
place. Yeah.
right, exactly. And so it's kind of that thing, you know. But that said, I don't want to come across like we're saying it's a bad thing that these people are, getting into this great program. It's very cynical, I think, is why we're so kind of bleh about it.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that FIFA does this. It's probably, again, like you said, the connections that people make, and it seems very hard to get into 500 applicants, only 25 people make it in, kind of thing. But it's like the FIFA opening up offices in Trump Tower. It's just another one of those things that you just kind of rubs me the wrong way because I just, with all we know and all the things that FIFA has done throughout the years, um, I just, and as an educator, wonder what they're teaching in those courses. Like, we're teaching on the surface, but nudge, nudge, wink, wink. This is how you really get things done. Probably the cynic in me a little more than anything. But let's
The
move on from
textbook
this
is the
story.
art of the deal. Anyway, yeah, that'll.
Yeah. All right. Not quite. I was today years old, but I was yesterday or today when I saw the story brought back to my attention. We're going to have away fans allowed back in Argentinian First Division soccer again after a 12-year ban. I completely forgot that fans were. I remember the violence, everything else, and that they were banning away fans from attending matches. And then over the last 12 years, I just forgot about it, that it was
Yeah.
even a thing that away fans weren't attending matches anymore. So this is going to be a big thing in Argentina, you know, to see if they've turned a corner in terms of fan violence and how successful it is moving forward. So I'm going to be curious to see, kind of follow that story and see how this goes for this next season.
Yeah, I same as you. It had been so long I had forgotten that was even a thing. Um, yeah, I don't know. Argentina has a pretty fiery, well, they have a pretty fiery football culture, but they have a pretty fiery culture. I mean, like, the passion is and I'm not like just stereotyping here. Like Argentinian people will tell you this too. Passion is like a very integral, necessary part of the Argentine culture. Like that was one of their main criticisms of Messi in his earlier years, that he didn't like show the passion. He didn't have the fire in his gut. So I think it's fair to say that translates to a pretty raucous football culture. And I know that things, just kind of like societally in Argentina are a little bit all over the place right now. So it'll be interesting to see, is football gonna is this away fans thing gonna be like an outlet for like good outlet for frustration, like it can be, and sometimes in
Right.
culture, or will it be a thing where people use it like hooliganism as a vessel for other kind of less healthy frustrations? It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it will. And keeping along the lines of away fans and traveling, did you see that the new visa integrity fee of $250 for people coming to visit the U.S. that the State Department has
I mean,
instituted?
that will necessarily deter some people coming to the World Cup next year. But I think that's kind of the point, right? Is like they only want people from
Right.
the global north, if you will, coming in. Yeah, I mean, and it's also pretty shit too, because this, without really mentioning it, part of what they're trying to do as well is offset the damage being done by this tariff nonsense. And so it's just all around like a really, really stupid fucking. Yeah.
I actually dug into this because I don't know much about what visa costs were, or anything else other than this seemed like a lot. But if you're part of I forget what it's called, but there's a list of countries agreement we have, and I'm sure, again, to not be too cynical about this, this list of countries at least is based on, appropriate security protocols that countries have and being able to travel and keep track of people in terms of how their passports are designed and the electronic chip that's in there. So basically, if you're in most of Europe, you don't have to pay this $250. But if you're outside of Europe, except for just a handful of countries, I think Israel, Japan, Taiwan, Chile, but outside of Europe, so most of Africa, most of South America, those places, when we think in terms of soccer and next summer's World Cup, most people would have to pay. Now, what I saw, I mean, two things I saw. One, it is supposed to be refundable. It's like a hold to make sure you don't stay, don't overstay your visa. And then there's a way you're supposed to be able to apply to get the funding back. But also saw that it's supposed to tie to inflation. So it should readjust in price on October 1st, which September 30th is the end of the US fiscal year. And then it could change. It could increase. Someone could just decide, we're going to make it more or less. Just, it's one of those things, again, when we think about the Club World Cup just finishing and looking ahead to the Men's World Cup in 2026, how challenging certain things in our country are making it to be. I'll go back to like it was in 94 when I attended a World Cup. I'm lucky enough that I have attended a World Cup in the US, and it was absolutely amazing. And I was really hoping for that this time around. And just, every time I see something like this, like you said, how many people is this going to deter or turn away? Let alone all the other policies that are going on, right? But, just another thing to make it more difficult. And how many people will pass on going to the World Cup, and how will that change the dynamic of the stadium atmosphere and everything else? I know it all remains to be seen, but just another one of those things again that makes things more difficult and kind of takes away what I was hoping would be my enjoyment for this World Cup in 2026.
Well, and I mean, this is not even the beginning of the nonsense that's going to come out of this. I mean, Iran qualified, right? Like that right there is going to be a geopolitical nightmare. I don't see how this doesn't turn into a giant fucking thing, unless Trump chickens out, as he always does, as they say.
Yeah.
On something. Yeah, I think this is, give it a month and we'll have forgotten about this $250 fee thing already, because so much more nonsense will have happened vis-a-vis the impending World Cup.
Well, speaking of possible nonsense here, let's shift to MLS. With the All-Star match coming up this week, which both of us talked about pre-show, it kind of sneaked up on the two of us since we're not big MLS followers. But this is usually when they have some of their league-wide meetings, and there's been some rumors and conversation that this idea of shifting the calendar to a more European calendar, so go fall to spring, is back on the table again. I saw from Jonathan Tannenwald, reporter at the Philadelphia Inquirer, who's got his ear to the ground pretty well for a lot of things MLS. And he put out something that said, in his estimation, there were 14 teams. There's 30 teams. You need 20 for it to pass. You need 2/3 majority. So he says 14 teams, he would say, are hard yes, like right out of the gate. 6 are hard no, and 10 are swing votes. So if you can pull 6 of those, that transition could happen. I don't really want to ask if you think it'll happen or don't think it'll happen, but more, if it happens, what do you think the ripple effect could be on the lower leagues in US, for the rest of soccer in the United States?
I think if the MLS were to swap to the European calendar, that the USL would do it faster than we think is possible. I think the Super League, right, is already on that calendar, as far as I'm aware. Right. I think that USL would view that as a very easy opportunity to shift to the calendar. They'd probably rather be on anyway, because I think USL, more so than MLS, understands their place in the global football pyramid, and they understand that if they're on the same calendar as the places they're trying to sell to, they're more likely to sell to those places. So yeah, as far as the USL is concerned, I think they would actually be happy about it, because it would just give them an easy opportunity to do the thing they're probably wanting to do already, if I'm guessing. As other leagues, I don't know. Would it make it harder? The weather could definitely affect some, more amateur, semi-professional clubs and more wintry climates, but at the same time, is playing in 100 degrees and 90% humidity in South Texas during the summer really better? I'm not sure that it is. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the league already goes through October, I mean, as a regular season, and then into November and December for the playoffs.
I
It
would,
starts back up again in February.
yeah, I would like to see a conversation more around, okay, we're going to move to this calendar. How do we work a winter break in there?
Right.
Because I think that's the one thing the English Premier League misses really is a proper winter break. Players don't get a chance to refresh, and the games suffer as a result of it. And that could be an opportunity in the United States to avoid some of the harshest months of home matches in some northern cities. I don't know. It's workable. I think it's workable.
Yeah, I would argue as well that it's definitely workable, and I think it's less a factor of actual weather, the temperature outside, which certainly there's a level of cold you don't want to play in. We saw this in a U.S. men's qualifier not too long ago. But you can postpone some matches and reschedule, certainly. And people talk about fans showing up or not showing up. I mean, we see other outdoor sports where fans still, they're
Yeah.
still there in, again, not too unreasonable cold. We're not talking like minus 40 or something. But, I think the bigger issue is not how comfortable it is for players or fans, because those I think are, even though it generally is colder, you can work with it. You can work with your schedule to schedule, warmer weather matches, just like we do when someone's have work on their stadium or the stadium's not finished. They have more away games. I think that part's all doable. I think the hardest thing is how do you keep the grass alive in the winter? I think that is a serious fiscal investment
Yeah,
that
that's fair.
clubs in the northern part will have to do between grow lights, the warming things, all the pipes and stuff they put under the field, proper drainage. I think that is the bigger thing in the expense. And, that would be a heavy burden on those teams that play in colder climates. I would imagine, I have no idea, but I would imagine some of the bigger conversation is, okay, if we go this way, and I'll just throw out Minnesota. I don't know if they're for this or against this, but it's like, okay, but you're going to have to help us. Then we need some compensation to get our stadia prepared for these winter months. But I,
Yeah,
I would
that's totally fair.
I would imagine there's a bigger fiscal concern than there is a comfort concern.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. I would say I think, and again, maybe MLS wouldn't reap this benefit as much as USL would, because again, I don't think MLS is as realistic about their place in the global football pyramid as the USL is. But I would argue that long term, those costs could be offset by, again, making it easier to sell players to the places you're trying to sell them by
Right.
simply being in sync with those clubs. Like
Well,
I,
that would
again,
be a huge fiscal advantage, getting it in line with the
long term,
international
right? I'm
calendar.
saying
Yeah.
there might be a cost up front, but I think long term, if you're realistic about where you stand in global football, which is a big if for some people in the United States, um, that can be a huge advantage if you're willing to have it be one.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's stay in MLS for a second. I don't know if you saw the Tifo. We had a lot of activity in the stands around MLS.
We did.
But in Portland, they did a massive Tifo. Let's see if I can pull this up and we'll get the video going here. But they did. Did you happen to see this at all? We have
I
the
haven't
video
seen this
playing for
one
anybody
yet. No,
who's
I haven't.
listening on the audio. So down the sideline, it's their 50th anniversary, I think. So they had massive Tifo displays all down one touch line, opposite the cameras. So they had people holding up, the little, we do plastic now, right? Instead of the old cards that we used to hold up to do those card stunts. And then a massive Tifo behind the goal, just celebrating their 50-year anniversary of the Portland Timbers. It really well done. I
Yeah.
read some places took 6 months. planning, painting, putting all this together and get everything done. So the video there is quite impressive, I think.
Yeah, I
For
hadn't
that.
seen that. I got like chills right now. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's amazing, and those are the things absolutely love to see. Those are some of the positive things, and I definitely wanted to get one of those out there because we have a couple maybe more negative things to
Yeah,
talk
that's
about
fair.
from this weekend.
Yeah.
But let me get this. See if we get this one set up. So, and this is not everywhere. We're just going to do a couple places. So in Seattle, they were holding up Chinga la Madre, la Migra signs up there in the stands, and my understanding is also it was added with a fuck ice chant as well. So they had that going in Chicago after having some of their members indefinitely suspended. They turned their backs on the field, but it was really turning their backs on the ownership, for their ownership turning the backs on the supporters. And this followed after this other incident that we talked about the other week,
Mhm.
this MLS Code of Conduct acceptable flag. You had looked it up online, and then I followed up a little bit more because we were confused about the Monterey reference. Monterey is the name of the security company there at Soldier Field. So that's
Oh, see, that
that's what
is
was confused
unnecessarily
us.
confusing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they had an incident there with someone flying a flag and was hogtied and removed from the section. So that then led to this, MLS Code of Conduct acceptable flag. And then they had, after their home match, some people got ejected. So, they turned their backs on the field in protest. And then at the, El Trafico, LAFC had this banner about Los Angeles United will never be defeated. It's written here in Spanish. But a good message, some very different messages up there, but all along these lines of what's going on politically, certainly. I mean, they're all references to what's happening around our country and friction that's going on between supporters and ownership groups right now. And one of the things, I don't know if you saw it, that I saw published, I think on Monday, might have been Sunday or Monday, is a Rolling Stone article that they did. And frankly, again, try not to go too far into the politics here on this show, but Rolling Stone has been doing some phenomenal political coverage, but they also had a very good story here on the dynamic of what's happening with these supporters and what's happening with MLS, and why there's this friction and things happen. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, I don't know if you saw it at all, Dylan.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's I don't have the link up here for the article. We'll put it in the show notes for anybody. It is behind a paywall, but it was a very good article. And actually, there was a quote I wanted to bring out of it because up to this point, LAFC as an organization is the only organization that has publicly said anything, and basically that they support their community, is what they said. And we talked about it last week. The LA Galaxy supporters there in the Victoria block, it was last week or the week before, I can't remember, but they put out, a big Tifo display and walked out. And they're upset with the fact that the Galaxy hasn't done anything. And according to the Rolling Stones article, the ownership groups of MLS, which I can understand knowing about a lot of the different ownership groups, they're afraid of falling on the wrong side of Trump. And that was specifically stated in the article. And then they asked about the Galaxy. And I want to read this one little excerpt because, the Galaxy asked for this statement that I'm about to read to be published in full, to put out there in the article, but talked about how they're going to stick to league policy and they're not going to address anything that's happening basically in the community. So here's their statement. Then I have a couple comments about it. I want to get your reaction as well. So here's the statement. It says, we have not issued a statement. We recognize the impact that recent events and actions have had on our community. For decades, we have honored the rich backgrounds, cultures, and experiences of our fans and staff. Our purpose as a professional sports organization is to unite and support our community around a shared love of the sport. We are focusing on prioritizing the safety, well-being, and sense of belonging for our staff and for our fans. Now, my comment is, that's what you had to put out. Why didn't you put that out in the first place? You didn't say ICE specifically. You're not following, on anything that's part of, the MLS, well, at least for supporters, the MLS code of conduct. There is a way you can always make a statement, or make it in such a way that goes along in the malicious compliance veins, that you're complying, but you're letting everyone know exactly where you stand. You don't have to say fuck ICE to get the message of fuck ICE across, or whatever it happens to be. And I read this, I was like, why the fuck didn't you not put that out in the first place? Like, that is you have to back it up with actions. But that's what you could have done. But yet, as a group, as an organization for the Galaxy, are going to say, well, here's our statement, but we're not going to put out a statement. We're not going to comment about what's going on in the community. And I think, to me, it just strikes of cowardice. And it's one of the things, again, I was going to say I hate about MLS, but that's unfair. I hate about the wealth class. Right?
Yeah.
That's a better statement than MLS or the owners of MLS. This fear of rubbing someone else, in this case in power, the wrong way, and you're afraid of some kind of blowback, rather than standing with your community. And this, I do think, in terms of MLS, is a fundamental problem of MLS, is they don't connect strongly with their community when push comes to shove. When push comes to shove, I mean, right now we're only seeing LAFC do it, and hopefully their actions will still back up their words that they've put out as an organization. But everybody else is just quiet and silent. And again, cowardice is the word that comes up. And it's why we're seeing, according to the article, hundreds of people giving up their season tickets in the supporter section because they're frustrated with the ownership group that wants to take money from them but won't back their community, their most passionate supporters, when push comes to shove.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, right? I have been, I guess maybe it's a little bit my own fault for the expectations, but I've been so disappointed in not just sports teams, but large businesses or law firms or whatever, and the way they've like preemptively capitulated to like the biggest just like cowardice bully that I have ever seen in my life. Like, I understand that he's the president of the United States, but he has never, ever, ever stood up to somebody who pushed back against him. Like, never once in his life. And to see these people who know that and decide to not do anything to not even defend, but support with words, even however hollow they may be, the communities that have given them life as a business, is pretty grotesque. And it also, I think, and again, we keep saying this every week that we're not trying to get political, but we keep getting more political. Not trying to get all Karl Marx on you here, but that's a fundamental problem with capitalism, is that at the end of the day, capital always fails to recognize that it needs to defend the proletariat class because they're the ones that make them rich. They're the ones that buy their shit. They're the ones that go to their games. And so if the wealth class doesn't protect and support the communities that have made them the wealth class, it will cease to be that status quo. And obviously not overnight, but it's cowardice, but it's also, I think it's evidence that people who have money aren't actually smarter than anybody else, because this is a very, very, very simple game theory calculation here that anybody can do. But because these people, all they see is dollar signs, they can't think beyond the next quarter. And so, yeah, I'm kind of talking in circles here. It's very disappointing. It's very unsurprising. And I think it again goes to show something that you and I have always known. And I think a lot of the people who probably watch this podcast have known for a long time too. Rich people don't know what the fuck they're doing and are not a good thing for society. Anyway, Karl Marx out.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's put a pin in that, as we said, and then let's shift
Well,
to.
I did want to say, sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
I did want to say, the Pacific Northwest in general is really one of the hotbeds of actual football culture in the United States, I think. And I'm sorry to my Seattle homies, but Portland especially, like the Timbers fans, the Thorns fans are so passionate, and the tifos they crank out are so impressive. The atmosphere at those games is unbeatable. And John, I don't know if you've ever been, but to any listeners,
not in person, yeah.
Providence Park is the best soccer stadium in America, hands down, and it won't ever be beaten by a new stadium. And the reason is because it's got history. It used to be a baseball stadium, and you can see that when you look at the stands. It's built into the neighborhood. They close down the streets around it and make them bike parking. Like on game days, everybody walks, takes public transit. It's a real like community stadium, and that is reflected in the atmosphere. And I just have endless respect and love for the Pacific Northwest supporters culture in general, but especially Portland. Providence Park is like my cathedral of football as far as United States soccer goes.
Well, I want to thank you for that, because it makes a much better transition to our next piece.
There you go.
Than where I was going to leave it. If you want a bit of a feel-good story in terms of soccer, and we'll link to it in the show notes, Skull.com has a story about the Annapolis Blues, and they're in USL2 right now. But a great story of, again, a team that connected with its community that gets, I think they averaged more than 8,000 fans a match. This is a League Two team, and is now, because of the pro rel story happening in USL, one of the reasons they moved also to USL and USL2 is they want to make the jump to League One, and they're looking for stadium opportunities. Right now they're kind of stuck in, because of stadium situation, they're stuck a little bit in League Two, because the longer season of League One means they'd be so low down on the stadium priority of where they currently play that it'd be just difficult to schedule matches. So, but still, very good story. Some people who were who have helped start this team connected with some of the other good grassroots soccer teams that we've seen develop over the last couple of decades. So we'll link to that in the show notes. That's just a quick note about the Annapolis Blues, and hopefully we'll see them soon moving up the ladder here. And,
yeah, definitely.
At least on the USL side. Okay, so let's get into some of our lower league and then some cup news. Since we are in the summer of all the soccer leagues, everybody who's doing summer soccer is pretty much wrapping up. On the Division III women's side, we've had two women's teams crowned. Utah United took the USLW championship with a 4-0 victory over the North Carolina Courage under 23s. So 4-0 in that one. And then over in the WPSL, the Sporting Connecticut team beat the California Storm 4-0 to take the WPSL title. So if things hold like they started this year, those two teams should meet in some kind of women's tournament next year, the Brandy Chastain Cup. We'll see if it expands beyond these championship winners, but we've got a couple of title holders there on the women's side. Any thoughts on that before we shift over to the men's side?
No, I think we talked about it a bit last week. I don't, as far as the clubs involved.
Yeah, and UPSL is, let's see. I think I have it here. just quickly, we are down to the quarterfinals now for UPSL. So they will come up this next weekend. Then they'll have a break and get their final four together in the following weekend. And the winner of the UPSL championship will get an automatic berth into the Open Cup. And we're going to talk about the Open Cup because I don't know how I missed it before last show, but U.S. Soccer did release some of the parameters for the 2026 Open Cup. So we now have a better idea of who is going to make it. So we'll talk about that in just a second. So one of them is the winner of the UPSL Spring Championship, which is what we have on the screen right now. So of these last 8 teams, whichever team wins here gets an automatic berth into that first round 1 of teams. All right. And then in USL2, we have, sorry, moving things around on my screen, trying to get ready. We do have pull this back up again. Apologies. All right, there we go. We are also down to the quarterfinals in USL2. They will be hosted again in both these matches will be hosted in the same place. So Ballard FC is going to be hosting their match against the Ventura County Fusion. And then over on the central side, you have Flint City against, who is it, Minneapolis? So they will be playing in Seattle, Washington, and then we'll have the other 2 matches over on the other side. They're going to be hosted by Vermont Green. And I actually caught Vermont Green's last match over the weekend. I was able to, had a calendar reminder and it was free and I jumped in. They were down 2-0 at one point. They came back, scored 3 goals and won. And then it's quite the celebration there at the end. And this, we talked about this last week, was the Vermont Green was the place that hosted the previous 2 rounds and it sold out those tickets in 4 minutes.
That's right. I think we talked about that last week. That's right.
Yeah. So that was quite the big event. So they're going to have, again, getting to the quarterfinals. Now, we'll talk about in a second, but USL 2 has some different parameters about getting into the Open Cup. And again, we'll talk about that in a moment. NISA, though, had some news. We'll see if we get any or still have some Southern California NISA teams. But they unveiled a new brand. They unveiled a new CEO. Have you heard anything about
No, I haven't heard anything about this at all.
So, yeah, NISA didn't get sanctioned this year from U.S. Soccer. They did not have a spring season. They're looking to do a fall tournament and try to get their ducks in a row to get ready to be sanctioned in 2026. It looks like they've had, I don't know about a clean sweep of their executives at NISA, but a bit of a change. Apparently, from what I've skimmed through, this new commissioner was instrumental in NISA Nation, which I think up until NISA's falling apart, was well regarded of pulling some of these regional leagues together. And he also was instrumental in the Southwest Premier League. So that's our region here. So I have very mixed feelings about this. Now he's supposed to be on morning kick around tomorrow morning. So if you're familiar with the YouTube podcast Morning Kick Around, he's supposed to be on there live. So depending when you're listening to us, he's supposed to be on there live on Wednesday, the 23rd, July 23rd. So that'll be interesting. I'm interested to hear what he has to say. When NISA first started with Peter Wilt and his original partner, I'm blanking out on his name right now, Jack Cummins, I think. I really liked the idea of what they were trying to do, and they were going to dovetail into the NASL, right, which was going to be the Division I league, and all that went to court, and then NISA, didn't have something it was working towards. It had horrible administrators. I mean, it was run poorly, right? We've just heard nothing but horror stories from them. but I like their idea. But I think, especially with the pivot of USL doing internal, at least promotion relegation, and really looking like a very strong, viable, multi level league on both the men's and the women's side, I just, I, I think the window for NISA has passed.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I would really like to see some of these. Like, if this guy is as good as some people are saying, which is hard to know whenever someone's new, it's all positive news. But if it's as good as people are saying, I would really love to see, well, one of two things: NISA either dissolve and people move somewhere that's a little more stable, or I'd rather see NISA, maybe NISA leave, but maybe the Southwest Premier League itself strengthen, since we're already seeing some good, strong regional leagues with promotion relegation take shape around the country. And if they can be the underpinnings of maybe a new, above them sit like a new fourth division that kind of bridges that semi-pro to pro before you actually get to the third tier of US soccer. I would rather see that. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. I think you get egos involved, and of course, U.S. soccer leaves the framework that we have is for leagues to compete against leagues. If we could just get everybody, I know people have said this for decades, but if we just get everybody on the same page working in the same direction together, we could have a kick-ass system in the U.S. Like, we have the teams there. We're missing the structure, a solid, reliable structure, and support from a federation to really help drive that.
Should be so easy.
Well, I missed on Morning Kick Around. They did have an interview last week with Eric Stover, who is the Cosmos CEO. So I wanted to try to catch that and see, get more information, because we talked about these 5 teams coming into League One for the USL. Those are the 5 that are confirmed, but we did get some more news about Eugene's team and the Cosmos. So they are both those likely to be coming in next year. So we're looking at, and we don't seem to have any teams leaving USL 1. So it looks like we're going to have 21 teams in USL 1 for 2026. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it seems as if they are pushing new teams towards League One rather than the championship, which I think is good. Kind of a prove that you can run at this level, and then we'll let you move on up. I am glad to see League One strengthening, because I remember only a few years ago it was like 10, 11 teams maybe. Because I really think at that level they need to get to a point where they can regionalize, and it just makes travel costs way easier. But you need more teams. So super excited to see the direction they're heading in that, for now.
Right. And if you want to see, I have it up on the screen here for people who are watching the video, but over at Beyond the 90, they do a quarterly updates on USL expansion, usually specifically League One expansion, because that's how things are tending to go now, trying to get more teams into League One to start building out that base to get ready for Pro Rel on the USL men's side. So their summer quarterly information is up there. We'll link to it in the show notes, but there's a lot of great information in there. If you want to know not just those 5 teams we just had on the screen, plus the Oregon team and the Cosmos, so possibly that full 7 for 2026, but also all the teams that are somewhere in the pipeline of looking to come into USL 1 over the next couple of years. Some could be in 2026, but most likely a lot of the ones that they're mentioning in that article, or a lot of the other ones outside the 7 we talked about, are looking to 2027 or beyond. And a lot of them, I find it very interesting reading, because a lot of teams look like they're willing to hold off a little bit to make sure they have the right things in place before they move forward, instead of just just jumping in. And you got a lot of League Two teams that are looking to make the jump at some point here. So
yeah, I gotta think there's a good number of them, some of the better run ones as well, that are sort of just biding their time until ProRel is actually in place, and then they might look to ramp up operations.
yeah, so let's well, since we're in the USL, let's quickly just give a reminder that the Jägermeister Cup, the final games, or I think there might be one game tomorrow, but coming up this weekend is kind of wrapping up the, and I think who's playing tomorrow also have games on the weekend, because I think they've only played 2 games so far. I can't remember which teams they are. But the Jägermeister Cup should wrap up this weekend, and we'll know finally who's making it to the knockout round. And again, we'll link to it in the show notes, but USL has a great article, because it's way too complicated for us to spend time going into, with what all the possibilities and permutations on how things could end up. But it does set up for some interesting matches. And I don't know if they're going to be on ESPN or Paramount Plus, but those are where their games, one of those 2 places is where they've generally been held.
Looks like it's Union Omaha play tomorrow, and then also again at both games at home again on Saturday.
Yeah. And I'm not sure. I think the 2 teams are playing tomorrow are way down at the bottom. I think it'd be a huge outside chance for them to make it even as a wild card team. But it'll be interesting coming into that last weekend. There should be some very key matchups to see who makes it to the knockout stages. I know I have gone personally back and forth on this Jägermeister Cup format of whether I like this or don't like this, but I think I'll be happy once they just get to the knockouts.
Yeah, agreed.
And this group thing of only 4 games, but with 6 or 7 teams, and not everybody plays each other, and just kind of, I do think I wish it would have been more of a draw, like the Open Cup a little bit, a draw and a knockout. You just, if you win, you move on. But again, I understand why they didn't necessarily do that with the number of teams in the championship and the number of teams in League One just didn't allow for a completely balanced kind of schedule to put together for the tournament. So,
well, and it was, as we said, I think the first time we talked about it too. I think this is the first year they've expanded it to have 2 separate divisions playing. They need to just get it done. Like, have it happen so that they can do it again next year and improve again next year. So, yeah, it's weird, but I'm very excited to get to the knockout rounds.
Yes. Yeah, it should be more fun. And we have, in at least a couple groups, chances of some USL 1 teams making it to the knockout rounds. So that'll be, I think, exciting. Again, I know, just like with the Open Cup, I love to see the USL championship teams make it as far as they can. I think in the Jägermeister Cup, I want to see the League One teams make it as far as they can. I want to see those underdog teams go the distance if they can do so. Okay, so let's finally get to Open Cup before we get to our main story for tonight. I don't know how I missed this before last week's show, but U.S. Soccer did put out some of the parameters for the 2026 U.S. Open Cup. And we had been talking all summer about how the winner of the National Amateur Cup, which takes place this weekend, so if you want to catch that, just Google National Amateur Cup and find out where the games are going to be streamed, because I'm sure they will be. The winner of that gets an automatic berth, which it does get an automatic berth. But they're changing some of the parameters around, especially teams like leagues like USL2 and the Open division, which are all the other amateur teams, anybody who can apply and qualify. So we actually officially do already have one team that is qualified for the 2026 World Cup. Do you have any idea who it is? It's through a quirky little funky thing that they did because they've started a new parameter.
Other than the hosts, right?
Well, no. So for the Open Cup,
Oh,
the
sorry, I thought you said the World Cup.
yeah, no, for the Open Cup.
Open Cup.
Maybe I did say World Cup, but I meant to say Open Cup.
Is it El Farolito? I feel like we
It
talked about it.
is.
Yeah, but
It
why
is
though?
El Farolito because they've starting a new tournament, an open tournament basically, and the winner of that tournament gets, and it's qualification tournament specifically for the Open Cup for all the open teams, right? The amateur teams. So non-professional would be outside of our top three tiers in the U.S. So that would include NPSL, USL2, the regional leagues, UPSL, all of those. So they're going to have a new tournament, but because they didn't have that tournament in place this year, the trophy's still going to go to whoever makes it the deepest in the Open Cup. So since El Farolito made it the furthest in last year's Open Cup, they get this new John Mata trophy. And we'll have to talk about who John Mata is on another episode. But they get the trophy and they get an automatic berth now in the next US Open Cup. So they're going to start a new tournament. They had a qualifying tournament before, but teams from, and I can't remember the terminology, but basically from leagues like the NPSL or USL2, they couldn't compete in this open tournament. They had to just qualify through their league. So however the league determined and whatever slots they got, they had to qualify that way. And I don't know how many teams USL2 had this last time around, but well, let me break it down this way. So of the 32 open division teams that will play in the very first round, 16 will come from this open round competition. And then another 16 will get a bye directly into the tournament, and that's going to be one slot for the National Amateur Cup champ, which is going to be determined this weekend, one for the UPSL Spring Champion, which will be determined August 8th through 10th that weekend, one for the John Mata Trophy winner, which we already know is El Farolito for making it the furthest last time around, and then 13 slots that'll be split between the NPSL and USL2. So because of they do it proportional as to how many teams each of those leagues have, that means the USL2 should get 9 spots, and then USL will decide how those get allocated among the USL2 teams, and the NPSL will get 4 slots, and they'll decide how those will be allocated. Now, the USL, if they follow the way they've done it before, they'll give one of those spots to their champion, whoever wins the USL2 championship. But then they don't really look at the playoffs, how you did in the playoffs. They look at how you did in your league standings, which I kind of like. They go back to how you did through the season. But because they have so many, smaller leagues and divisions and conferences, and I can't remember which term is for their smallest one, they'll take all those champions and then they'll rank them because they don't all have the same number of teams. So they'll do a points per game kind of thing and then rank them a certain way. So actually, if you go to the cup.us, we'll link to this in the show notes as well. The cup.us has a listing of what should be, at least based on their calculations, the top 9 teams, but then a team could, decide they don't want to participate in the Open Cup. They can't afford to do it, whatever. So it'll just then drop to whoever the next team is. So they have kind of a ranking there. The closest team to us that looks likely to get a Open Cup berth is the Ventura County Fusion, which won the Southwest Division for USL2. So they look like they're going to make it. But the change for the Open Cup tournament, and here's where I want to get what you think about this, is USL2 overall is getting fewer slots than they have in lots of years before this. But now, since they're only down to 9, any team that doesn't get one of those automatic buys directly into the first round of the Open Cup, they can enter into the qualifying open rounds, which are going to be taking place this September, October, and November to figure out who actually then qualifies for the Open Cup. So this is a change. USL2 2 teams couldn't compete against the other amateur teams, but now they can. And NPSL, they all can enter in against these amateur teams. So I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, because it's likely that these more organized semi-professional teams are probably going to be a little stronger than some of these amateur teams. We may end up in the long run with fewer amateur teams, even though there's 16 slots available in this open division. They could all go to USL and NPSL teams, and we unlikely to see some of these other amateur teams that we've seen in the past. So
Interesting.
Curious your thought. It may not work that way at all. I mean, we don't know. But I'm interested to see how it plays out, and it really, I think, is going to be a long-term disservice if we're giving more opportunities to, I don't know, USL2 and NPSL teams and squeezing out amateur teams.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree. I think for me the most frustrating part is the way it feels like the goalposts are moving every year. It seems like if I were running a club at that level, I would be very frustrated by the fact that I may have done something that might have qualified me in a previous year, but it seems like it changes each and every year. I feel like if you want to establish, the seriousness and the longevity of the tournament, you have to kind of make the standards standard.
Well, our problem is, as we've talked about so many times on this show, we don't have a proper open pyramid. So once you get below the 3rd tier in U.S. soccer, which we have identified leagues and they're considered professional, it's wide open after that.
Yeah.
So, U.S. soccer, someone has to make a decision whether you give, like they have, NPSL and USL2 get automatic buys directly into the Open Cup, just like the professional teams do. And they're going to decide, since the USL gets 9 of these and NPSL gets 4 of these automatic bursts. But outside of that, it's wide open, between our regional leagues, our USL2, UPSL, NPSL, the League for Clubs. Right? We have all these, and that's just on the men's side. So we have all these varying leagues, and we don't really know where they fit properly within a structure. Because if you go to some parts of the country, NPSL is stronger than, say, the UPSL or USL League 2. But you go to a different part of the country, USL2 is the strongest league. And somewhere else it might be UPSL is the strongest. Or it might be League of Clubs, right? So we don't have a true hierarchy. So it's hard to say, we're going to do kind of a qualifying tournament with these lower leagues to figure out, who advances, like we do with the rest of the tournament. The League 1 teams come in, and then championship teams come in, and then we get the MLS teams come in. We can't do that down at the bottom because we don't have that structure, and we really need it. We absolutely need it. U.S. soccer really needs to do something to help, even if it's identify, like we actually quantify in some way what Division 4 looks like, so we can at least separate that and start working our way down. But we need to have a better system. Otherwise, I really don't want to see in the long run that a team has to be part of the NPSL or USL2 to really qualify for the Open Cup. That all these other teams that we have across the country get squeezed out somehow.
Well,
that I think would be the worst case scenario.
Let me play devil's advocate a little bit, though. Would that funneling not sort of act to create a more defined lower league structure?
It could. It could, if everybody starts gravitating towards, say, USL2. I mean, I as much as I like USL and I like the structure that they've done, if U.S. soccer does this and funnels teams this way, almost, backhandedly forcing them, if they want to participate in everything else, into something like USL2, to me, it's no different than all the leverage and things that they did to strengthen MLS and keep it as the top
Yeah,
first
that's
division
fair.
league along
That's
the
fair.
way. And that's what concerns me. It gets us. I love the USL. I love the structure. I really hope they're successful with promotion relegation. I do not want to see, though, my national federation start favoring one league over another unless they're dictating. All right, USL is going to handle all the way down through Division 4, and then here's where other groups get to come in. You know, unless it's completely on the table for everyone, and we understand how the system's going to work. But this kind of like, well, you have a choice. You could join one of these
Wow.
two leagues if you
You
want to
can
make it
have any
better.
color you'd like as long as it's black, right?
Right, as long as it's one of these two.
Yeah,
Yeah, I that's if I play this out in my mind, those are some of my concerns. And
yeah. Well, that's fair.
I
I mean, and it's the same answer as it always is, right? The U.S. Soccer Federation is kind of abdicating its duty to safeguard
right.
the national pyramid of, domestic soccer. So it is what it is. That's what it's going to always come down to.
And I think especially coming out of the pandemic, places like the APSL on the East Coast and the Midwest Premier League in the Midwest, but these regional leagues we have are getting stronger and stronger. They're doing promotion relegation already. If you go to the APSL, between the APSL and down to the other leagues like the Cosmopolitan Soccer League, and you keep going down in the Cosmopolitan Soccer League, which has 3 or 4 different levels, and then they promote up into APSL. Like, we have a good structure in place in some places. We just need that stuff to also feed in somewhere else. And I really wish, I mean, I don't want to spend forever on this, but I really wish US Soccer would help, like, at the least get everybody in the same room to start hashing some of this
Yeah,
shit out and figure out
yeah.
where to go instead of just leaving it to the market. And
Well, it's not even
you
left
know
to the market, though, is it? It's one of the least market-based
yeah.
solutions that's ever been found. I mean, I'd have to dig up this article because it was from a long time ago, but it's kind of interesting when you think about how in America we have this society that like idolizes lifting yourself up by your bootstraps and the individual and capitalism, but our sports are like the least capitalist thing you could
Right.
possibly imagine, at least internally. It's just kind of this interesting dichotomy.
Yeah, it's socialism for the billionaires.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess
Yeah,
when you
not
look at it
not
that
not
way,
even
it's
really that, but
it's the
yeah.
same thing as always. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get to our final story, I guess, the thing we're going to talk about, which I had really hoped was going to be a bigger story when I came across this last week. Because I'm always, you know, Dylan and I, we at the end of the show we usually talk a little bit and try to figure out what we're going to do the next show. We have a couple things kind of always in our pocket that we could do, but then I saw something happen, I don't know, 5 6 days ago, and this will be good. This will be perfect timing. And that was about the Kickback Soccer media. So 5 or 6 days ago, at least on Blue Sky, because they're partnering with Blue Sky, there was a big push about Kickback Soccer Media, this new media platform made up of people who have been working in soccer circles as journalists or working on shows like Morning Footy on Paramount Plus, but coming together to create a new platform that just covers soccer in the United States. And when I heard this, I was super excited because I remember when I heard the Golazo Network was going to start, that there was just a channel, a single, linear channel, even though it was on the internet, but, has shows and time slots, but this linear channel that was just going to be all soccer 24/7. And I really thought at that time it would be a game changer, and I think it has been quite a bit. It's Paramount Plus has really leveraged this Golazo channel and the rest of their, internet sports properties to do more with the Open Cup, with USL and showing matches. And I think it's great. I mean, I remember a time in my life where I would turn on Sports Center or something, just have it in the background as I was doing stuff to just catch up on sports and news. And now Golazo is my go-to as a soccer fan. Now, a lot of times they've got games or something else, or it's not really what I want to watch, but it is usually, if I want something on the television in the background, for me, it's the first place I go, just to have it. And I like, there are things I like about it. There are things I wish I could change about it. Or like been totally frustrated with morning footy this last week or so after the Club World Cup. It's like they're in their deep dives into stuff I'm not interested in, I guess.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that there is a channel for soccer in the US that just does soccer. That's it.
Well, and not just a channel for soccer in the US, but a channel for soccer in the US that doesn't have an obvious slant towards a business. And by that I mean they
Correct.
talk about the USL. They'll talk about, I mean, I don't know that they talk about like the UPSL much, but I know I've heard it mentioned. I know the Open Cup gets talked about. So it's nice to have like a major player in the soccer space who actually acts like they give a shit about soccer, and we'll talk about
Right.
domestic soccer beyond the MLS as well.
And that's what this group looked like, and I think they still could be. And I say looked like because there is a huge push on Blue Sky, and they're partnering, and I think exclusively on Blue Sky, which I know
It
you
looks
and
like they
I
have an
are happy
Instagram.
about that.
It looks like they have an Instagram as well, for what it's worth, but they don't
Okay.
have a Twitter account. X, whatever. Shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I, I was excited seeing more sports coming to the Blue Sky space because that's where we are. And people who have had strong connections in soccer circles and soccer media in this country, but also some people who have been recently squeezed out of their positions due to budget cuts or whatever at these other sports media places that cover all sports. And we see this time and time again. Things ramp up in terms of soccer and do it, and then there's cutbacks. And it's not just soccer. It's not the only sport this happens to, but they'll do cutbacks, and then you see these I think very good soccer journalists lose their job, have to go somewhere else, and usually they will find another job. And I've always thought, well, what would happen if some of these people just got together and, I mean, a little bit like The Athletic, when The Athletic, before it got taken over by the New York Times, was, just sports. Well, what if people did that just soccer and leveraged their connections and what they knew to really just cover soccer for those fans who want to follow soccer and don't necessarily want all the sports? Like, I know I have a harder time watching Sports Center now because I just don't care about a lot of the other sports. I like being able, if I want to know something, even if it's about basketball or baseball or football or tennis or golf or anything, I like to be able to go to a source that's really just that rather than a generalized thing. So I've moved away in my life from something like SportsCenter, which I loved when it first happened because it was growing up. If you wanted sports, you waited till 25 after the hour for your local news or the national news to get your little 5 minutes of sports, or get it in the newspaper, and that was it. But once you had a cable channel devoted to sports, you're like in heaven. Then I got a channel devoted to soccer. It was even better. And this, I was really excited about this Kickback Media. They had the big launch 5 days ago, and then they had something that happened today in Austin. But really, I haven't seen much happen with their platform in the last few days. And to me, it was a big miss. It was a big launch, a big ramp up, and then I'm not really sure where they're going. I really hope it picks up steam over time. So Kickback Soccer is the main media thing, and then I'm going to give you a chance to jump in, and then we'll talk about a couple of their other properties and what they're doing.
Yeah, here I'll drop the
Yeah.
little private chat, the link to their website, because I had to. It actually took a little searching. I had to search Kickback Soccer Media to find them, because if you just Google Kickback Soccer, it turns out you're going to get a lot of sales for the bounce back boards that coaches are looking to buy. So,
Right. Yes.
yeah. But I mean, I love the idea, the fact that they are conscientious enough to try and do this via Blue Sky, to me, says good things about who's behind it and what their intentions are. So I absolutely will be giving them, my time of day. I want to see what they do. I want to see what they do because I like what I've seen so far, even if, they haven't really made the splash they were maybe hoping to. Oh, looks like they have a LinkedIn profile as well. They can get in on the conversation about the CEO and his mistress.
Yeah. I have it up on the screen for anybody who's watching the video. So it's kickbacksoccer.com. Is that right? I want to make sure I have it right. Yeah, kickbacksoccer.com. You can sign up and get a newsletter. I haven't done that yet to get the newsletter. I was really hoping to see more through Blue Sky. They did have an event tonight, and I misunderstood their postings on Blue Sky because it was supposed to be 6 o'clock in Austin because of the All-Star week over there with MLS and the skills challenge tonight, but they were doing something at I think a local pub, and they were doing a live event, and I thought it was going to be live streamed. I rearranged my day so I was available at 4 o'clock our time because I wanted to hear what they were going to say to have some information be ready for our podcast. And they didn't stream it. It was just like a very hyper local thing in Austin for people who showed up in person. Now, maybe it's going to be broadcast out at a later date and it was special for those people who were there. But I feel like that was a huge miss, a chance for people to get in and get a taste and an idea of what this group is going to do and do some live streaming. And if you're going to be at an event and do things, like your chance to be able to do that and put that out there. And
Yeah, I don't know.
I was disappointed. I feel like that was a huge miss that they really could have broadened an audience, picked up some people. But either way, in the long run, I'm hopeful for this. I like the idea of it. I really hope, Soccer Wise is one of the groups that they're working with. Soccer Wise podcast had been out for a while, but that's following under this umbrella. There's a new podcast or group. I'm not really sure. A lot of it, not really sure, because you get bits and pieces, but haven't really seen what's going to happen. But I think it's a new podcast hosted by Susanna Fuller, who is the host of Morning Footy on Golazo Network for their first kind of full year. And I think it's called the Kickback Committee. They're doing something. They're supposed to be doing fan engagement type things and really help try to drive new fans into the sport as they lead up to the World Cup. So at least that's where they're starting. I really hope to see this expand a little bit more because I would love the idea to be able to, in this day and age, from a technical standpoint, just like we see with the Golazo network, is not a true linear channel. Like you have to get it through an app or get it online. I don't think you can get it anywhere on cable or satellite. But it works like a traditional linear channel with time slots and shows. But you can do that now, right? If you have some studio space, you can do that. I think the ability for, I really want to call soccer a niche sport, even in this country, but for people who like a certain sport or event, it's the internet makes it super handy to bring people together. And the better you can leverage all the tools you have on the internet, the more successful you're going to be. So I really am crossing my fingers and hope this is along the lines of the Golazo network, but bigger and broader, and to do more than just a TV channel.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe they're starting small. I don't know. I was a little surprised it wasn't a bigger thing on their launch or whatever you want to call it as well. But anybody who's trying to do a soccer specific publication, I think it's still an underdeveloped enough space that there's room to make a splash and shape the impact these people want to make. So yeah, I'm eager to see what they do. I hope it turns out to be something great. Um, you know, we'll see. Keep tabs on it.
Yeah, if you we'll put it up on the screen here. Also, if you go to variety.com, they have an article about the oops, I get the right thing scrolling up here. An article about the Kickback Soccer media and what they're trying to do. So we can link to that in the show notes as well. But hopefully, especially if you're on Blue Sky, you should be hearing a lot more about Kickback Soccer media over the next few months, and let's hope it blossoms into something a bit bigger, especially as we kind of steamroll down the hill towards the 2026 World Cup. All right, before we leave, I just want to mention there's been a couple good things on the Sweeper podcast, which I always find interesting, especially as we get into the UEFA qualifying right now. You get these places like the Azores and small teams that are getting ready to play and see if they can qualify for the tournament proper. So I think those are always fun. There's some good stories there. Also, the It Was What It Was podcast, I thought it had to me, a very fascinating story of something I was not very familiar with at all about Colombian football and first division football in this league that they had called El Dorado. Crazy history behind some South American football and a strike and other things that were happening in Argentina and how they poached a bunch of players from Argentina and other places to create this league, but also how the league was instrumental in basically suppressing. Well, it was used politically. It was used politically in terms of what was happening in Colombia at the time, to give people a very specific diversion in terms of football. So I thought it was fascinating. Jonathan Wilson, again, as part of this group, and I think tells a fascinating story and historical context. So again, if you haven't followed the It Was What It Was podcast, I strongly recommend it. They have some great stories. I personally especially love these ones that dive deep into some things well before I was born, to kind of look at the socioeconomics and the politics of football at the time and how things, how football a lot of times influenced what was happening politically around the world.
Yeah, it's funny, right? I mean, I know this is not really where you're going with this, but when people will say things like "keep politics out of my football," it's like, well, how about maybe you keep football out of politics, but you can't keep politics out of football. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, Dylan. Any plans for this week in terms of soccer? I know we're in our summer kind of low.
I'm gonna make another effort to watch some early round qualification matches for European footy. We've got Champions League was today and tomorrow, and Conference League and Europa League the next couple of days. I've got a couple teams, like I said last week, from places I've been that I enjoyed, that I like to keep tabs on. So I'm gonna see if I can't find I don't know, maybe a slightly less than above board stream to watch some of these games. So.
Yeah, I haven't. I can't say I've spent too much time looking, but I haven't caught any of the games. I could just keep checking FootMob for.
Yeah. Well, if you're ever curious, we can jump on the dark web and I can show you what I got. So,
all right.
That was a joke for legal purposes. That was a joke.
Yeah. Well, as I said earlier, I might head out to some Comic-Con stuff if things work out. But otherwise, I will probably try to catch the USL2 playoffs, and then I'm going to see if I can catch the National Amateur Cup, at least the finals, if I can't catch the semifinals this weekend. So see who else qualifies for the 2026 Open Cup here. But I have been, I mean, it's not, it's amateur soccer, a lot of the stuff for the National Amateur Cup, and USL2, it's down there in what we loosely call our fourth division. So you're not seeing the best of the best, but I am constantly amazed at the quality of the soccer for what it is, and generally how
Absolutely.
well people played. And I think it only bodes well for us in the long term in terms of soccer in this country, and giving more people quality places to play or apply their craft as a professional. So excited to see it keep growing. So anything I can do also to help support it, I'll be trying to tune
Absolutely.
into
Do you
those.
know? I know in the past USL2 has like streamed the playoffs on their website. Do you know if they're planning to do that again or
Yeah, I
what?
think USL2 playoffs are done right now exclusively through the NBC Sports Engine, and
Oh,
and
I
they're
didn't realize.
free.
Oh, okay,
You
cool.
know, so if you go to the NBC Sports Engine website
Sure.
and set it up, that's where I watched the Vermont Green
Okay,
match,
I
and
didn't even realize.
it was good. It was a good quality
Yeah,
stream, everything. So I
very
know
cool.
if you're watching the league season in like USL2, it's hit and miss on the quality because the
Yeah,
teams
sure.
usually put it together. But in the playoffs, USL has certainly, you know, provided an extra level of support. So it's it, it's good. I've enjoyed it. The Vermont Green game was fun. The home fans were great. Big field celebration after the victory. You know, I love seeing that stuff. That to me is what football is all about, and especially when you connect so strongly with your community like that.
Definitely.
So those are the fun stories I enjoy watching.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I think we've kind of hit the end here. So any final comments before we head out?
Sure. Unrelated to anything we've talked about, I've got it in my little subheading there. There's a game released in the last month or two called Rematch that is developed by Slow Clap is this game studio. They're not a sports game studio. They're not related to EA or anything. And it's a football based game. And it's small sided, small field, 3, 4, 5 aside. But I can't articulate quickly in like a 20-second soundbite why, but it is the best footy simulator game that has ever been created. You control your own individual character and you're playing online with other people in these small-sided games, right? So it's not like FIFA where you got the AI controlling 10 out of your 11 players at any given time. It's
Right.
legit people are trying to play soccer for the most part. Don't get me wrong, you get some bad teammates. It's online gaming, but um, I have been hooked so quickly. I have got some friends who are playing with me, and it's just it really like it's everything I wished FIFA was like most of my life in terms of a simulator for playing football. So I highly recommend any listeners who are gamers. Rematch is the game. They're going to do a lot of expansion on it. It's just getting started. It's genuinely a lot of fun. Hit me up.
And
My
where
DWill27 on Rematch. It's on all platforms: PlayStation, Xbox, PC. They don't have cross-platform play yet, but that is coming in the next month or two. So I really think this game is going to be big. I think it will put a dent in FIFA sales in the next few years.
all right. Well, if I
Yeah.
can find a good, more general link for it, I will put that in the show notes. But yeah, we'll check in with you. Maybe that's what I'll spend a little bit of my week doing. See if I can find the game. And
Yeah. Take a look at it. It's pretty interesting.
all right. Well, on that note, we'll have everybody go enjoy your soccer for the week, or maybe check out a new soccer match with Rematch.
There you go.
Other than that, we'll see you next week. If you want to join us live, we go Tuesdays at 6 o'clock on YouTube. So come join us there and participate in the chat. Otherwise, catch us on your local podcast feeds, and we will see you again next week. Bye,
Have a
everyone.
good one.